Every celebrity you've ever watched on screen, every politician you've seen on TV, every billionaire you've read about in the news, Joe Rogan just called them all out. And he didn't whisper it. He said it loud, he said it clearly, and now the entire internet is losing its mind over it. What did he actually say? And why are some of the most powerful people on the planet suddenly very, very nervous?
The Epstein Files. You've heard the name. You've seen the headlines. But for years, the real story stayed locked behind closed doors, behind redactions, behind people in high places who had every reason to make sure you never found out the truth. Then the files started dropping. Names started leaking. And Joe Rogan, the most listened to podcast host on the planet, sat in front of his microphone and said something that nobody with real power wanted said out loud. This is the story of what he said, why it matters, and why some of Hollywood's biggest names are quietly panicking right now.
Because a lot of people still don't fully understand what the Epstein case is actually about. Jeffrey Epstein was not just some creepy rich guy. He was a man with connections to presidents, royalty, tech billionaires, A-list celebrities, and world leaders. He ran a private island, Little St. James, that was nicknamed Pedophile Island by locals. He had a private jet, nicknamed the Lolita Express, that flew dozens of the world's most famous people to places they probably wish they'd never gone. He was arrested in 2019 on federal sex trafficking charges involving minors, and then, just weeks later, he was found dead in his jail cell. The official story was suicide. A lot of people didn't buy it, and a lot of people still don't. But the story didn't die with Epstein, because Epstein kept records. His right-hand woman, Ghislaine Maxwell, kept records. And for years, those records stayed sealed, protected by courts, protected by powerful people, protected by a system that seemed to have a very strong interest in making sure nobody ever read them. Then, the seals started to break.
The documents began dropping in waves. First in 2024, then more in 2025, and then what felt like a flood after mounting public pressure from lawmakers, journalists, and millions of regular people who simply refused to let the story die. What came out was disturbing. Flight logs with names on them, deposition transcripts where accusers named specific people, references to encounters at Epstein's properties involving individuals who publicly presented themselves as upstanding citizens. Now, not all names in the documents are there for the same reason. Some people flew on the jet for legitimate meetings, some visited the island for what they claimed were innocent reasons. But others, based on what came out in sworn testimony and legal filings, were there for reasons that had nothing to do with business. And that's where things get complicated. Because some of those names belong to people you know, people you've seen in movies, people you
Voted for. People you've watched give speeches about protecting children. The public reaction was massive. Social media exploded. Hashtags trended for days. People started going back and digging through old interviews, old photos, old flight manifests, trying to connect the dots themselves. And into all of this walked Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan has been talking about Epstein for years, but when the latest wave of documents dropped, he did an episode that has now been viewed tens of millions of times across platforms. And in that episode, he said something that hit differently than anything else out there. He looked at the camera, or the microphone, depending on where you're watching, and he made one thing very clear. The people whose names are in those files should be absolutely terrified right now. Not because of him, but because of the public. He talked about how the old system, the one where powerful people could bury stories, threaten journalists, pay off lawyers, and wait for the news cycle to move on, was broken. He said the internet changed everything. He said there was nowhere to hide anymore.
About how every time a new set of documents dropped, thousands of people across the world started cross-referencing names, pulling old receipts, and connecting information in ways that used to be impossible. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, these people thought they were untouchable. They thought money and influence would protect them. They thought time would protect them. And now they're sitting in their mansions, watching their names trend, knowing that the story is not going away. That's the chilling part. Not a threat, not a dramatic declaration, just a cold, calm observation. The world is different now. The cover-up machinery that used to work, it's broken. And the celebrities, the politicians, the billionaires who thought they were safe, Rogan's message to them was simple. You're not.
Let's talk about the celebrity side of this, because that's what has driven this particular wave of the story to such a fever pitch. When people think of Epstein's social world, they think of names, big names, the kind of names that make you stop scrolling and read again just to make sure you saw it right. Prince Andrew, already destroyed. His association with Epstein ended his royal career, cost the British royal family enormous public trust, and led to a multi-million-dollar legal settlement with one of Epstein's accusers, Virginia Giuffre. Bill Clinton, his name is in the flight logs multiple times. His team has always maintained the trips were for legitimate charitable work. The public, largely, has not believed that explanation. Kevin Spacey, already convicted of unrelated charges in the UK, his career is gone. His name appearing anywhere near the story adds to a narrative that Hollywood has a serious systemic problem. But those are the known quantities, the names that have been out there for years. What the newer document releases have done is expand the circle, and the expansion is what has people rattled.
Because some of the names that have surfaced or been connected by investigators and independent journalists are people who still have active careers, people who still appear on talk shows, people who still have management teams working hard to protect their public image. Those are the people Rogan is talking about when he issues his warning. He made the point that in previous eras, a story like this would have a short shelf life. The news cycle would move, a publicist would do damage control, a lawyer would send some letters, and in 6 months, everyone would have mostly moved on. That's not how it works anymore, because the internet doesn't forget. Communities of independent investigators don't stop digging, and every new document release, every new legal filing, every new deposition transcript brings fresh eyes and fresh attention. The people who thought their connection to Epstein was safely buried, they're realizing it wasn't. That's the warning.
Something even bigger underneath all of this that Rogan touched on, and it's the thing that I think resonates most with people who have been following this story for years. It's not just about the individuals, it's about the system that protected them. Think about what it takes to run a network like Epstein's. You need private planes with crews who stay quiet. You need island staff who see things and say nothing. You need lawyers who file the right motions and make the right calls. You need journalists who are told by their editors to stay away from the story. You need prosecutors who offer sweetheart deals. You need judges who accept them. That is not one person's doing. That is a network of protection. And that network existed because the people being protected were powerful enough to make it worth everyone's while to look the other way. What he's saying is not just about naming names. It's about the fact that the protection racket is visible now. People can see it. They can trace it. They can show you exactly how prosecutors in Florida gave Epstein a deal so light it was called a non-prosecution agreement for federal crimes, a deal that essentially let him walk. They can show you who was involved in making that deal happen. They can show you the timeline of events. The machinery of cover-up, which once operated in the shadows, is now being documented in real time by millions of people who are paying attention and refusing to look away. That's what makes Rogan's warning chilling.
It's not theatrical. It's not designed to get clicks, though it certainly has. It's a simple statement of reality. The old rules no longer apply. And if your name is in those files for the wrong reasons, there is no amount of money, influence, or celebrity that is going to make this go away.
Here's the moment in Rogan's commentary that really cut through. The part that went most viral, that got clipped and shared and reacted to across the internet. He was talking about how some of these celebrities and public figures have spent years carefully maintaining a narrative, a charitable foundation here, a public advocacy campaign there, carefully managed media appearances, the entire performance of being a good person. And he said, all of that is going to mean nothing if your name is in those files for the wrong reason. All of it, the awards, the humanitarian work, the fan base, none of it is going to matter. Because when people see the name of someone they admired in connection with a child sex trafficking network, the admiration doesn't survive. It can't. No PR campaign is capable of undoing that. And the thing is, he's right. We've watched it happen in real time. We watched how quickly public sentiment turned on figures once the details became undeniable. The pattern is always the same. First, denial. Then doubt from fans. Then leaked documents or sworn testimony. Then silence from the celebrity. Then the collapse. The reason Rogan's warning hit so hard is because it wasn't addressed to some abstract villain. It was addressed to anyone who thought their fame or fortune had placed them above accountability. It was addressed to an entire class of people who have operated for decades with the assumption that power protects power. That assumption is breaking down. That's the story. So let's bring it together. The Epstein Files have been releasing in waves. Names are coming out. Flight logs, deposition transcripts, legal filings, all of it is becoming part of the public record in a way that wasn't possible even 5 years ago. Joe Rogan, with the largest podcast audience on Earth, looked at that situation and said something simple and devastating. If you were involved in what Epstein was doing, there is nowhere left to hide. He called out the protection system, the lawyers, the prosecutors, the media figures, the institutions that kept this buried for so long. He pointed at the way the internet has fundamentally changed the game, putting research tools in the hands of millions of people who have no interest in letting the story die. And he delivered a warning to every celebrity, every politician, every billionaire whose name might be in those files for reasons they'd rather keep private. The old world is gone. The world where power meant immunity. The world where fame was a shield. That world is over. Whether you agree with Rogan or not, whether you think he goes too far or not far enough, the core truth he's pointing at is real. The Epstein story is not going away.